They accused her of stealing a ruby. What they didn't know? She hunted smugglers for a living. The boutique was quiet at first, the kind of silence you only find in places where a single stone costs more than a car. Bright lights spilled across glass counters. Diamonds glittered in one case, emeralds in another. At the center, under a velvet spotlight, lay the store's crown jewel, a ruby the size of a pigeon's egg. Cut so sharply, it seemed to glow from within. And then Elena Torres walked in. She wasn't dressed like the customers who usually strolled through these doors. No silk scarf, no designer bag, just dark jeans, a fitted jacket, and the calm posture of someone who never needed permission to be anywhere. She carried herself like she belonged, but to the owner watching from behind the counter, that confidence looked like audacity. Linda Ferris had run Ferris Jewelers for 3 decades. She could spot hesitation. She often bragged before a word was spoken. To her, hesitation meant weakness, and weakness meant someone who could not afford what they touched. When her eyes settled on Elena, she didn't see strength. She saw someone who didn't fit. "Can I help you?" The words dripped with the politeness of suspicion. Elena's gaze swept the cases, steady, almost clinical. "I'd like to see your ruby collection." "Something for a graduation gift?" Linda smirked. "Rubies are special. We don't usually show them unless our customers are serious buyers." The subtext was clear. "You don't look like you belong here." Elena said nothing at first. Years in her line of work had taught her the power of silence. Silence could disarm. Silence could expose. But silence, in this moment, also gave Linda room to push further. "You should know," Linda added, her voice loud enough for the 2 sales clerks to hear. "The ruby on display is worth more than most people's annual salary. Looking is free, of course. Buying? That's another matter." The clerks chuckled. A couple nearby glanced over. Elena felt the weight of eyes pressing in, but her expression didn't shift. "It's for my niece," she said calmly. "She graduates next week, top of her class. A ruby is her favorite stone." That steadiness unsettled Linda. She leaned forward, tapping the glass above the glowing gem. "This ruby? It's not for window shoppers. Why don't you try something more modest?" Something flickered in Elena's eyes then, just enough to make the clerks stop smirking. But before she could speak, Linda straightened abruptly, her gaze sharp as a blade. "Where is it?" Elena blinked. "Where is what?" "The ruby. The case is open. You were standing here, and now it's gone." Her voice carried across the boutique, slicing through the hum of background music. A man near the door paused mid-step. A woman clutched her purse tighter. The clerks rushed over, whispering in frantic tones. Elena's brow furrowed, but her tone stayed even. "Check your cameras." "I haven't touched your display." Linda's lips curled. That's exactly what a thief would say. "Security!" 2 uniformed guards appeared almost instantly, as if waiting for the signal. They flanked Elena, 1 on each side, their hands hovering just close enough to suggest force. The customers' phones rose like a forest of small, glowing trees. Red recording dots blinked. Someone whispered, "She stole it." "I saw her bag move." Another voice answered, "No, she was just standing there." Elena exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She could end this in 5 seconds. One badge pulled from her wallet would flip the script, force Linda to apologize, make the guards back away. But something deeper held her still, because sometimes silence wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was strategy. Linda folded her arms, triumphant. "You slipped that ruby into your bag. Don't bother denying it." The guards stepped closer, their shadows falling across Elena's shoes. One reached for his radio, muttering into the mic. Within moments, the boutique was no longer a place of quiet wealth. It was a theater of accusation. Every customer became a juror. Every phone became a witness. And Elena Torres, senior investigator for the International Luxury Task Force, one of the most skilled specialists in dismantling smuggling rings, stood accused of stealing a single ruby. She didn't move, didn't argue, didn't even raise her voice. She simply waited. And as the tension thickened, the narrator's question echoed like a challenge meant not just for Elena, but for everyone watching, inside the store and beyond the screen. Would you stay silent or fight back? The boutique was small but carried the arrogance of an empire. Glass cases glimmered under bright lights, each holding rings and necklaces worth more than a year's salary for most families. Elena Torres paused at the entrance, her purse resting neatly against her side. She was here for one reason only, to find something special for her niece's graduation. But the air shifted the moment she stepped in. Behind the counter stood Linda Ferris, the boutique's manager. Blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, blazer pressed crisp, smile thin. Her eyes narrowed the instant they landed on Elena's simple sweater and worn boots. "Can I help you?" Linda's tone cut sharp like glass breaking. "Yes," Elena replied, calm but steady. "I'm looking for a ruby pendant. Something elegant, something meaningful." Linda blinked. Then her lips curved, not with kindness, but with ridicule. "Rubies? You do understand," she said, voice dripping condescension. "We don't usually bring those out unless the buyer can afford them." The room went still. Two women browsing diamond earrings froze mid-whisper. A man by the door shifted awkwardly. Elena felt the sting but swallowed it, steadying her breath. She had faced warlords, smugglers, cartels. This was just another battlefield, only lit by chandeliers instead of floodlights. "I would still like to see one," she answered softly. "For my niece. She graduates this week." Linda tilted her head, eyes scanning Elena's bag like a predator choosing where to strike. "Fine," she said at last. She walked slowly to the case, exaggerated in every movement, as if handling sacred relics. Keys jingled. The glass clicked open. A velvet tray emerged, rich red stones shimmering like drops of frozen fire. Elena's heart eased for a moment. One pendant in particular caught her eye, a ruby cut into a teardrop framed in gold filigree. It glowed under the light, delicate yet strong. Her niece would love it. "That one," Elena said, pointing gently. "May I?" Linda lifted it, but instead of offering it forward, she pulled it back toward her chest. Her smile sharpened. "Actually," she said loudly enough for the entire boutique to hear, "before I show you anything else, I'll need to see inside your bag." The air cracked with silence. Even the background music seemed to fade. Elena blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "I beg your pardon?" she asked. Linda's voice grew firmer, feeding on the gathering audience. "A ruby is missing from this case. I saw you slip something into your purse." The accusation cut through the boutique like a siren. Gasps, murmurs, eyes turning sharp. The man near the door took a step closer. One woman clutched her handbag tighter, and in the mirrored wall behind the counter, Elena spotted them. Two mall security guards lingering outside, pretending to study a directory. Their radios crackled faintly, her pulse hammered in her ears. "I haven't touched anything," Elena replied, voice steady but clipped. "You know that isn't true." Linda crossed her arms, holding the pendant aloft like evidence. "Then you won't mind proving it. Place your bag on the counter." Elena inhaled slowly. Years of training steadied her spine, but inside, fury boiled. Her purse, simple leather, practical, earned through honest work, now branded as a thief's tool. Not because of evidence. Not because of reason, because she looked like someone who could be accused. Because to Linda Ferris, Elena Torres did not belong among glittering stones and polished floors. The crowd was watching now, phones in hand. Fingers hovered over record buttons. This was no longer private humiliation, it was spectacle. Elena straightened, shoulders squared, eyes locking with Linda's. "No," she said, calm, clear, unyielding. "I will not open my bag, because I have stolen nothing, and because you have no right to demand it." Murmurs rippled, some skeptical, some supportive, but all waiting, breathless, for the explosion they sensed was coming. Linda's face flushed crimson. She glanced toward the door where the two guards had entered, heavy boots on polished tile. One rested a hand on his radio. The other shifted uneasily, caught between orders and conscience. The manager pointed at Elena. "She's the one. Search her now." Every eye locked on Elena Torres. Every whisper curled into judgment. Every second stretched like a blade poised to fall. And Elena stood tall, silent, waiting. Her voice inside her head whispered what she already knew. This was not about jewelry. Not about a ruby, it was about perception, prejudice, power, the kind she had battled for years on the hidden front lines of smuggling investigations. The kind she never thought she'd face, while shopping for a gift. And as the guards closed in, the question hung heavy in the air. Would she break? Or would she fight back? The sound of heavy boots shattered the boutique's fragile silence. Two mall security officers pushed through the glass doors, radios crackling at their belts. One was tall and broad-shouldered, his uniform stretched tight across his chest. The other, shorter, shifted nervously as though he already regretted the call. "Elena Torres," the taller one barked, his eyes cold. "Step away from the counter. Open your bag." The crowd shuffled closer. A mother with a stroller whispered to her teenage son. A man pulled out his phone, already live streaming. The air thickened with the unspoken thrill of a public spectacle. Elena did not move. She had learned long ago that stillness could be more powerful than resistance. Slowly she turned to face them, her voice calm but deliberate. "You have no cause." "I haven't stolen anything." "You cannot search my personal property without evidence." The taller guard, his name tag read Grant, scoffed. "We don't need a lecture on rights. Manager saw you take it." Linda Ferris seized her chance, voice rising in false outrage. "That's correct." She slipped a ruby from this case straight into her purse. "I saw it. I demand you detain her." A ripple of judgment moved through the boutique. Some gasped. Others muttered. One woman leaned toward her husband. "I knew something was off the moment she walked in." The shorter guard, Ellis, shifted uneasily, eyes flicking between Elena and Linda. His voice was less certain when he added, "Ma'am, please, just show us the bag." "Make it easy." Elena's gaze hardened. "Easy?" she repeated, her tone slicing the room. "Easy is surrendering my dignity. Easy is allowing lies to stand as truth." Grant moved closer, the heavy thud of his boots echoing in the small space. "This isn't up for debate. Open it, now." Elena took a step back, not in retreat but to claim space. She raised her voice just enough to carry to every corner of the boutique. "If you believe I stole something, then check the cameras. They're right there." She pointed up, her finger steady toward the black domes embedded in the ceiling. "Those will prove I touched nothing." For the first time, the crowd murmured in agreement. Several phones tilted upward, recording the cameras above. But Linda pressed forward, her eyes sharp with panic. "The footage takes time to review. We can't wait while a thief walks free." Elena's patience thinned. Fury burned under her calm surface, but her voice remained clear. "Or is it that you're afraid the footage will prove you wrong?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Grant's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to challenges, especially not public ones. His hand hovered near Elena's arm, fingers twitching with the impulse to grab. "You're wasting our time," he growled. "Last chance." Bag on the counter, phones lifted higher. The crowd leaned in. Every second stretched, elongated, balanced between humiliation and defiance. Elena's chest rose as she drew a steady breath. She squared her shoulders, her voice slicing through the silence like a blade. "No, I will not. I have committed no crime, and I will not play along with yours." Ellis swallowed hard. Sweat gathered at his temple. But Grant had no such hesitation. He grabbed his radio, pressing it with practiced ease. Code 10, Jewelcraft Boutique. Subject refusing to comply. Requesting immediate backup. The words hit like thunder. The crowd gasped. The hum of tension became a roar of whispers. Elena stood firm, her eyes burning holes into Grant's smug expression. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, yet sharp enough to pierce every corner of the room. Grant sneered, but his hand trembled slightly on the radio. The boutique was silent again, except for the soft buzz of phones recording, capturing every word, every gesture, every ounce of injustice. And in that fragile silence, the question lingered in the minds of everyone watching. What would happen when the police arrived? The boutique's glass door swung open with a violent crash. A uniformed officer stormed inside, shoulders broad, badge gleaming like a weapon. His nameplate read, Officer Riker. The smug curl of his lips suggested he had already decided the ending. "What do we got here?" Riker boomed, his voice echoing against polished glass. He let his hand rest casually on his holster. The gesture was deliberate. Authority turned into a threat. Linda rushed forward, her relief almost giddy. "Thank God you're here." She refused a bag check. A ruby's missing. "She's hiding it!" The officer's gaze snapped to Elena. His eyes were sharp, eager, predatory. "Always the same story, isn't it?" he said, smirking. "They never just cooperate." Elena stood her ground. Her heartbeat thundered, but her voice carried calm steel. "This is a misunderstanding. The cameras will show—" She didn't finish. Riker grabbed her shoulder and slammed her against the boutique's glass wall. The entire case rattled, jewelry clinking like alarm bells. Gasps tore through the crowd. Phones whipped up, recording every brutal second. The cold surface pressed against her cheek. His breath reeked of arrogance as he hissed into her ear. "Don't tell me how to do my job. Hands behind your back, now!" Elena's arms were twisted sharply. Cuffs bit into her wrists, steel too tight, leaving her fingers numb. She winced, but her voice rose above the humiliation. "This is excessive force. I have rights. You are violating them. Rights?" Riker barked a laugh, tightening the cuffs. "You've got the right to shut up. Resisting arrest will look good on you." The crowd grew louder. Whispers turned to shouts. "That's not right. She didn't do anything." Yet no one stepped forward. Phones stayed up, eyes wide, the scene too unreal to interrupt. Riker dragged her toward the door, each step a cruel display for the audience. Elena lifted her chin, refusing to let shame claim her posture. "You're parading an innocent woman," she said clearly, voice carrying to the phones. "And every second is being recorded." The crowd's hum swelled into outrage. Some voices chanted, others called his actions disgusting. Still, Riker's grip tightened, shoving her toward the mall corridor. At the threshold, Elena turned, her voice ringing through the boutique and into the hallway beyond. "You should know something." "Officer Riker, save it for booking," he snapped, yanking at the cuffs. Her tone sliced the silence. "I'm Elena Torres, senior officer with the National Anti-Smuggling Task Force. My badge is in my jacket pocket. If you had asked before assaulting me, you'd already know." The words hit like a gunshot. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some pushed forward, phones shaking as they captured his reaction. For a split second, uncertainty flickered across Riker's face. Then came the sneer. "Sure you are. And I'm the president. This badge is fake. Impersonating an officer. Add it to your charges." He shoved her forward again. "She's a federal officer," someone shouted from the back. "He cuffed a task force leader for shopping." "Check her badge!" another yelled, but Riker ignored them. His jaw was tight, voice louder now, desperate to dominate the noise. "Back up, everybody back! You want obstruction charges too?" The crowd didn't move. Instead, more phones lifted. A teenager whispered, "It's live already." "Thousands watching," Riker's arrogance faltered. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Yet he kept pulling Elena toward the exit. Her voice cut through the rising chaos, sharp and defiant. "Shopping while brown. Is that your standard procedure, Officer Riker?" The boutique exploded with noise. Shouts, gasps, chants starting to form. The officer's mask cracked, rage flaring. He shoved her harder, nearly tripping her. "You're digging your own grave," he hissed. But Elena didn't falter. Her wrists burned. Her shoulders ached. But her eyes scanned the sea of raised phones, recording everything. She knew the truth was no longer hers alone. It belonged to every camera lens in that room. And as the doors burst open into the wide mall corridor, the roar of the crowd followed. Hundreds of eyes. Dozens of phones, all locked on Elena Torres, handcuffed like a criminal, paraded by a man too blind to see he was already losing. The question lingered, hanging heavier with every step. When the world saw the truth, would justice finally arrive? The mall corridor froze. Shoppers pressed against storefronts, their chatter silenced, phones raised high. The polished tiles reflected the harsh scene. Elena Torres, cuffed and dragged, her dignity turned into a public spectacle. Officer Riker's grip was tight, his voice louder than necessary. "Performing for the growing audience. Should have just cooperated," he announced. "Now look, making a scene for nothing. Every word was a dagger of humiliation. Elena's wrists burned under the metal, her shoulders screamed from the awkward pull, but she kept her head high. Her posture spoke louder than her pain. She would not bow. Whispers swirled through the crowd. "She's not resisting." "This doesn't look right," a teenager whispered into his phone camera. "They're arresting a woman for shopping." Riker shoved her forward, toward the mall's side exit where his patrol car waited like a cage. The afternoon sunlight poured through the glass doors, blinding, merciless. Before he could push her outside, Elena stopped. She turned her head, her voice strong enough to carry across the parking lot. "You should all know the truth. I am Elena Torres, senior officer with the National Anti-Smuggling Task Force. My badge is right here in my jacket." He never asked. He never checked. And now, he assaults a federal officer in public view. Gasps rippled. Phones zoomed in. Hands pointed at her pocket. The word spread like wildfire through the crowd. "She's task force!" someone shouted. "He cuffed a federal agent." Riker's sneer faltered just for a moment before hardening again. He yanked the badge from her pocket, holding it up as if to crush its meaning. "Fake!" he declared, though his voice had lost its edge. "Another charge! Impersonation!" The crowd erupted in chaos. "She's legit!" one man yelled. "He's scared. Look at his hands shaking." A woman cried, "Check the badge number." Teenagers chanted, streaming live to thousands. For the first time, Riker looked cornered. Sweat glistened on his forehead despite the cool air. He tugged Elena closer, trying to shield her from the crowd's eyes, but the eyes were everywhere now. "Every second is recorded," Elena said, her voice like thunder in the storm. "Every violation, every abuse. Are you sure you want this documented forever, officer?" The chant started softly, then grew. "Let her go! Let her go!" Riker snapped. "Back off!" he shouted at the crowd. But the command had no power. The crowd only pressed closer, their voices louder, stronger, unified. Phones rose like torches. "This is going viral," a girl near the front announced, her screen glowing. "Already tens of thousands watching." Elena caught fragments of their outrage. "She's a hero, and he's parading her like a thief." They caught the wrong one this time. "Justice for Torres!" The chant shifted, rhythmic and defiant. "Justice! Justice!" Riker's face flushed red, panic crackling beneath his arrogance. He pulled harder at Elena's arm, desperate to reach his patrol car. But the crowd was no longer passive. A wall of humanity blocked the exit, chanting louder with every second, and then flashing lights. Another cruiser pulled up silently, the engine humming low. From the driver's seat stepped Sergeant Monroe, a seasoned officer with a face carved by years of experience. He scanned the scene, crowd chanting, officer sweating, Elena cuffed. His voice cut through the chaos, calm but firm. "Officer Riker," Monroe called. "Care to explain why you've got a task force captain in cuffs?" The crowd gasped, then roared louder. Confirmation. Vindication. Their suspicions solidified into fury. Elena's heart surged with a mix of relief and rage. At least one man here knew the truth. At least one voice carried weight. Riker froze, his grip still on her arm, his arrogance collapsing under the weight of exposure. The crowd's chant thundered against the mall walls, relentless now. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" And in that storm of voices, the question hung, sharp as a blade. Would the system finally admit its mistake? Sergeant Monroe's voice cut the tension like a blade. "Officer Riker," he repeated, louder this time. "Why is Captain Torres in cuffs?" Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Even the chanting paused, waiting for the next strike. Riker's grip tightened. His jaw worked furiously, searching for words that would justify the unjustifiable. "She's no captain!" he snapped. "She's a thief." Store manager witnessed the theft. I acted accordingly. Monroe's eyes flicked to Elena, then to Linda Ferris, still hovering near the boutique entrance. Her hands shook, but her chin was high. "She put a ruby in her purse," Linda insisted. "I saw it with my own eyes." Elena straightened, despite the cuffs biting into her wrists. Her voice carried above the crowd, each word deliberate. "My name is Elena Torres. Senior Officer, National Anti-Smuggling Task Force, badge number 4689. My credentials are in my pocket. That man assaulted me before verifying anything. This woman fabricated a theft. The crowd exploded again, chanting louder, recording every word. Check her badge. She gave the number. She's telling the truth. Monroe's jaw tightened. His instincts screamed conflict. Procedure demanded order. Loyalty demanded silence. But the truth was shouting in his ears from 100 phones. Riker barked, desperate now. She's lying. She's staging this whole thing. Look at her. Does she look like a captain? She's just another scammer playing the system. Boos erupted. The crowd's fury surged, drowning his words. Elena's voice cut through the storm. Does a captain look like your stereotype, Officer Riker? Or does she look like the woman you underestimated? Because the only thing I stole today was your illusion of power. Gasps, then cheers. The chant shifted. Torres! 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 Riker's face burned crimson, his authority crumbling. He turned on Monroe, his voice cracking. Sergeant, back me up! She's resisting. She's lying. This is enough. The single word from Monroe silenced everything. Even the crowd hushed. His gaze lingered on Elena's badge, still dangling from Riker's clenched fist. Slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand. Give it to me, Monroe ordered. Riker hesitated. Sweat dripped down his temple. Finally, he slapped the badge into Monroe's palm. The sergeant examined it closely. He knew the insignia, the codes, the texture of authenticity, and what he held was no forgery. This is real, he muttered under his breath. But before relief could wash over Elena, Monroe's expression darkened. He looked around, at the cameras, the chanting crowd, the sea of phones broadcasting live to the world. Shut those cameras off, he barked at the guards. Now! The crowd erupted with outrage. You can't silence us. It's live already. Phones were lifted higher, defiance blazing. Elena's eyes locked on Monroe. Her voice, hoarse yet unbreakable, cut through the noise. You can destroy cameras. You can delete footage. But the truth is already out there. You can't erase this. For a moment, Monroe froze. The weight of her words sank deep, echoing against every wall of the mall. His hand hovered near the cuffs on her wrists, but he didn't move. Riker lunged forward, fury twisting his face. She's manipulating everyone! Don't you see? If we lose control here, we lose everything. But Monroe didn't answer. His silence was louder than any denial. His eyes, haunted, uncertain, told the truth. He wasn't sure control could ever be regained. The crowd chanted louder, shaking the tiled floor. Justice, justice, justice! And in that storm of voices, Elena stood taller despite the cuffs, her defiance unbroken, because she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The system was cracking, and it had started with a single lie about a ruby. The mall had become an arena. Voices thundered from every direction, echoing off glass and marble. Justice! Justice! The chant was relentless, a heartbeat pounding against the walls. Sergeant Monroe stood frozen in the storm. Elena's badge was still in his hand, heavy with proof. He stared at it as though it might burn him, torn between duty and consequence. Sergeant? Elena's voice rang clear, steady, despite the steel biting into her wrists. You know the truth now. Remove these cuffs. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dozens of phones zoomed in, capturing Monroe's hesitation. But Linda Ferris burst forward, desperate. Her voice cracked with panic. Don't listen to her. She staged this. I saw her take the ruby. She's lying to all of you. Boos exploded. Liar! Someone shouted. Where's the ruby then? Another demanded. Show the cameras, Linda! Linda's face flushed, but she stood tall, gripping the counter like a lifeline. She's tricking you all. Don't let her fool the police! Elena turned, her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. You think this ends with one accusation? How many others have you branded as thieves to feed your profit? How many innocent lives ruined for the sake of your bottom line? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones caught every word, broadcasting her accusation to thousands already watching live. Monroe shifted uncomfortably, sweat dotting his brow. His voice wavered when he finally spoke. Captain Torres, we'll need to sort this at the station. It isn't safe here. Elena snapped her head toward him, her voice sharp with defiance. No, safe is exactly what you're afraid of. Safe means truth spoken aloud, not buried in reports. Safe means the world hearing every second of what's happening right now. The crowd roared approval. Monroe flinched. His authority was slipping, not because of Elena alone, but because the crowd had chosen her side. The chants shook the air. Let her go! Let her go! And then, sirens. Blue and red lights cut across the glass entrance. A second unit stormed in, 6 officers in formation, their faces grim. Their leader, Lieutenant Hale, carried an air of finality. Orders from above, Hale announced, loud enough for everyone. Clear the area. Confiscate recordings. Take the suspect to holding, now! The crowd erupted in fury. You can't take our phones! This is illegal! Everything's already live! The officers pushed forward, hands outstretched, demanding devices. But the crowd surged back, holding phones higher, refusing to surrender. The scene teetered on the edge of chaos. Elena's voice rose above it all, fierce and unyielding. You think you can silence the truth? It's too late. The world is already watching. Every step you take now writes your guilt in history. Her words sliced through the shouting like lightning. Faces turned, cameras locked tighter on her, capturing every syllable. Hale's jaw clenched. His gaze flicked to Monroe, then back to Elena. You don't control this narrative, Torres. We do. But Monroe's hesitation was plain, his silence louder than Hale's command. He held the badge in his fist like a stone he couldn't throw away. His eyes betrayed him, haunted, uncertain, afraid. The crowd screamed louder, a tidal wave of voices. Justice, justice, justice! Riker snarled, lunging toward Elena, but Monroe stepped between them at the last second, his arm blocking the move. The crowd erupted with cheers, gasps, shouts, cries of hope. For the first time, Elena saw cracks forming in the wall of authority surrounding her. The storm of voices surged again, carrying a single question forward. Would the system crush her truth here and now, or would it finally collapse under the weight of its own lies? The air trembled with noise. Phones down! Lieutenant Hale barked, voice hard as steel. His officers spread through the crowd, hands outstretched, demanding devices. This is an active investigation. Hand them over now! But no one moved. Instead, a woman near the front raised her phone higher. It's live already, she shouted. Tens of thousands are watching. Others echoed her, voices weaving into defiance. We won't stop recording. You can't hide this! The officers pressed closer, their presence heavy, their hands grabbing at the nearest screens. But each phone snatched was replaced by 2 more, raised defiantly into the air. The crowd had become a forest of glowing eyes, unblinking, unbreakable. Elena Torres stood at the center, shackled but unbowed. Her voice cut through the storm, carrying across the marble floor. Do you see what's happening? This isn't about a ruby. It's not about theft. It's about control. About silencing anyone who doesn't fit their picture of who belongs. Gasps rippled, then shouts of agreement. The chant shifted. We belong! We belong! Linda Ferris tried to scream above them, her face pale with fury. She's a liar! She staged this! You're all fools! But her voice drowned in the tidal wave of protest. Phones zoomed in on Elena, not Linda. The story had shifted, and the crowd knew who the villain was. Lieutenant Hale's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, towering over Elena, his presence like a storm cloud. Enough speeches. You're under arrest. End of discussion. Elena lifted her chin, her eyes locked on his. Her wrists ached, blood drawn by the cuffs, but her words carried sharp and clear. You think this ends with me? Look around you. The world is watching. This is bigger than one woman in cuffs, bigger than one false arrest. How many others have you buried, Hale? How many stories silenced before they could breathe? The crowd roared, shaking the walls. Monroe flinched, his knuckles white around her badge still clutched in his fist. He knew the truth. He had seen it carved into her credentials. His silence had become complicity, and every second weighed heavier on his chest. Elena Torres, Hale spat, each syllable laced with contempt. Your authority means nothing here. This is my command. My city. My rules, Elena's reply was fire. Your city? It belongs to the people, and they've already taken it back. The crowd erupted in cheers. The chant returned, louder, shaking the air until the floor itself seemed to pulse. Justice, justice, justice! Phones caught every angle. Faces gleamed with determination. Children sat on shoulders, chanting with voices high and clear. Monroe's throat tightened. He glanced at Hale, then at the crowd, then back to Elena. He could feel the walls closing in. Every choice now was permanent. Every move would echo far beyond this mall. "Sergeant!" Hale barked, snapping him back. "Take her to the cruiser now!" But Monroe didn't move. He stood frozen, sweat sliding down his temple, his grip on the badge trembling. Elena's eyes met his, steady, unwavering. She didn't need to speak. The truth in her gaze was enough. "You know what's right," she finally said, her voice quiet yet cutting. "And you know the cost of staying silent." The crowd hushed, waiting. Hale's fury boiled. His hand shot into the air, signaling his officers to advance, to drown the defiance in brute force. And in that breathless instant, cameras lifted higher, hearts pounded faster. Voices waited to erupt again. The world held still, because what came next would decide whether truth lived or was buried one more time. The silence cracked like glass. Lieutenant Hale's raised hand dropped in a sharp command. "Move in!" His officers surged forward, bodies armored in authority, faces hard with duty or fear. They shoved through the crowd, knocking aside anyone in their way. Shouts erupted. Hands locked together. Protesters braced against the advance. The marble floor became a battlefield. Phones shook but never fell. Each angle captured the chaos, the panic, the defiance, the clash between uniforms and ordinary citizens. Linda Ferris pressed herself against the boutique's shattered display, her voice shrill. "Arrest them all! Every one of them!" But no one listened. At the center, Elena Torres stood unshaken, her wrists bleeding against steel, her eyes burning with calm fire. "This is what power looks like when it fears truth," she shouted, voice rising above the storm. "It lashes out, it breaks, it tries to silence." The words cut through, finding ears hungry for meaning. Protesters echoed her. "Silence us? Never!" "Truth will out." Hale shoved forward, his face crimson. He jabbed a finger toward Elena. "Take her down! Now!" Two officers lunged, reaching for her arms, but another figure moved first, Sergeant Monroe. He stepped into their path, his body a barrier. His voice cracked like thunder. "Back off!" The officers froze, uncertain. The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers. Hale's head whipped toward Monroe, disbelief etched deep. "What are you doing?" Monroe held up the badge, Elena's badge, the truth gleaming under harsh lights. His voice shook, but his stance was solid. "She's Captain Torres. Organized Crime Division. 20 years of service. And you know it," gasps rippled. Phones zoomed in. The chant shifted again. "Captain Torres! Captain Torres!" Hale's fury darkened, but the crowd's roar swallowed his voice. Elena raised her head, strength surging through every word. "You wanted to bury me, but now the whole city knows. You can't erase me, Hale. You can't erase us." The officers faltered. Some lowered their hands. Others glanced nervously at the sea of phones recording every second. The doubt spread like cracks in glass. Linda screeched, desperate. "She's lying! They're all lying! Don't listen to her!" But her words fell like stones into a river, swallowed by the chants, drowned by the tide. Monroe stepped closer to Elena, his back to her now, facing Hale and the men still loyal to him. His voice was low but carried. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The crowd exploded, a thunderous wave of applause and shouts. The marble shook with their fury. Hale's face twisted, his authority crumbling under the weight of truth and defiance. He bellowed, "Sergeant Monroe, you're finished! Do you hear me? Finished! You're throwing away your career for a thief!" Monroe didn't flinch. "I'd rather lose a career than lose my soul." Phones caught every word. The chant swelled, deafening. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Hale's hand hovered near his weapon, his rage trembling at the edge of violence. His eyes locked on Monroe with venom. "You just signed your death warrant, Sergeant." The crowd gasped. The moment held, sharp, fragile, ready to break. Elena's voice cut through like a blade. "Calm. clear, unshakable. No, Lieutenant. He just signed his name to history. The cheers rose again, walls trembling under their weight. Hale's men hesitated, torn between loyalty and fear, between orders and the undeniable tide rising against them. The confrontation had reached its breaking point, and there was no turning back. The council chamber shook with sound. Justice! Justice! The crowd roared, their voices bouncing off marble pillars, echoing through every corner. But Hale wasn't listening. His jaw clenched. His hand twitched. He barked again, louder, harsher. Form a line! Push them back! I want order in this chamber! Several officers obeyed, slamming their batons against shields. The sound was thunder, meant to terrify. They advanced, step by step, forcing the crowd to retreat or be crushed. Screams rang out as protesters stumbled, caught in the press of bodies. Phones flew from hands. A young boy cried out as he fell, his mother clawing desperately to reach him. The marble floor turned into chaos incarnate. Elena's voice cut through, ragged but fierce. Look at this! Look at what they do when the truth comes out! She turned, addressing the phones, the cameras, the world beyond those walls. Her words flew like sparks into gasoline. They arrest the innocent. They profit off probation fees. They sell justice like a commodity while lining their pockets. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones zoomed closer. Faces turned sharper. Hale snapped, "Shut her up!" Two officers lunged, but Monroe moved again, his arms wide, his voice hoarse. "Don't touch her!" He braced against their advance, shoving one back with his shoulder. Another tried to swing a baton, but Monroe caught the wrist mid-swing, glaring with steel. The crowd roared. "Monroe! Monroe!" Hale's fury erupted. His voice cracked the chamber like a whip. "You're done, Sergeant. You'll regret this." But Monroe didn't move. His back was solid, his stance immovable. Elena seized the moment, her voice ablaze. 47 cases in 1 year. All at this mall! All the same officers. All the same charges, resisting arrest, assaulting an officer. Her words crashed like waves. This is not law. This is extortion. This is a machine built on black pain and corporate profit. The chamber exploded with noise, shouts, cries, fists in the air, signs waving high, phones live-streamed every second. Social feeds lit up in real time. The truth was spreading faster than Hale could smother it. He saw it, and it drove him mad. His face twisted, veins bulging at his temple. "I said, take her down!" But his men faltered. Some lowered their batons. Others froze, eyes darting between Hale's fury and the crowd's thunder. The hesitation cut him deeper than any blade. "You cowards!" he screamed. "Do your jobs!" But no one moved. Only Monroe stood tall, breathing hard, sweat shining on his forehead. "No more, Hale, not today." The words hung in the air, vibrating with finality. The chants swelled again. "No more, no more, no more!" Hale's chest heaved, his career slipping, his control unraveling. He looked at Elena, bound but unbroken. At Monroe, standing between him and obedience. At the cameras, capturing every ounce of his failure. His rage reached its breaking point. Slowly, deliberately, Hale's hand dropped to his holster. The metallic click of the snap echoed louder than the crowd. Gasps spread like wildfire. Phones tilted forward, desperate to capture the moment. "Don't you dare!" Monroe warned, his voice ice. But Hale's eyes blazed with unhinged fury. He yanked the weapon free, raising it high, pointing it directly at Elena Torres. The chamber froze. Even the chants died, replaced by a collective, horrified silence. Every eye locked on the gun, every camera focused, the red recording lights glowing like witnesses. Hale's voice was ragged, spitting venom. "This ends now." And the world held its breath. The room had gone silent. Hale's weapon glinted under the chamber's harsh lights. His hands shook, not from fear but from fury held too long. He leveled the barrel straight at Elena's chest. Gasps rippled. A child whimpered. Dozens of phones tilted forward, broadcasting every second. Elena stood tall, wrists bound, eyes locked on the man who wanted to erase her. Her breathing was steady. Her voice cut through the silence. "Do it," she said, calm as stone. "Pull the trigger. Show the world what justice looks like under your command, Hale snarled, his teeth bared like an animal. His finger twitched near the trigger, but Monroe moved. He stepped between them, arms wide, his broad frame shielding Elena from the weapon. His voice was steel, loud enough to carry. If you fire that gun, you go through me first. The crowd erupted. Cheers, shouts, cries of defiance. The chant surged like a tidal wave. Stand down! Stand down! Phones shook in trembling hands, recording history live. The sound filled the marble hall, vibrating against every pillar. Hale's face flushed crimson. He jabbed the gun toward Monroe. You think you can stop me? You think a sergeant means anything against me? Monroe didn't blink. It means everything. It means I still remember what this badge is supposed to stand for. The chamber shook with approval. The chant changed. Monroe! Monroe! Elena's voice rose behind him, firm, resonant. Every camera is on you, Hale, every word, every move. This is your legacy, an officer pulling a gun on his own. The crowd picked it up. The world is watching. The world is watching. Hale's eyes darted wildly. The pressure mounted. His authority was slipping away like sand through clenched fists. Linda shrieked from the side, her voice sharp with desperation. Shoot them! End this before it destroys us all. But her words drowned in the storm. Nobody cared anymore. Nobody believed her. Protesters surged forward closer and closer, raising their phones like torches. Their bodies pressed together, shoulder to shoulder, forming a wall of humanity. They weren't backing down. Elena lifted her chin, her voice carrying over the roar. This is bigger than me. Bigger than him. This is every voice you've tried to silence, every life you've ruined. And now they're all here, standing together. The crowd thundered. Together. Together. Hale's grip faltered. Sweat dripped down his temple. His weapon trembled, caught between rage and the undeniable force rising against him. Stand back, he bellowed, his voice cracking. All of you, stand back! But no one moved. Instead, Monroe stepped closer. So close the barrel pressed against his chest. His voice was quiet, almost intimate, but every microphone caught it. You're not pointing that gun at me anymore. You're pointing it at the truth. And the truth never dies. The chamber held its breath. For a long, terrible second, Hale's finger tightened on the trigger. Phones zoomed in. Protesters screamed. Monroe's eyes never wavered. Elena's calm never broke. Then, bang! The sound split the chamber apart. Screams erupted. Phones jolted violently. The marble walls shuddered with the echo. For a heartbeat, no one knew who had been hit. The camera feeds blurred. The crowd reeled. Someone cried out in shock, and the truth of that gunshot hung heavy in the air, the cliff balanced on a knife's edge. The chamber reeled. The gunshot's echo still clung to the marble walls. Screams tore through the air. Phones jolted and shook. The chant had died, replaced by raw terror. Elena's heart hammered. She turned, searching, desperate. Monroe staggered. His hand pressed against his chest, dark red blooming across his shirt. Gasps erupted. Some cried out his name. But then, he straightened. His legs held. His voice roared through the chaos. I'm still here! The crowd erupted. Relief surged like a wave. Monroe lifted his bloody hand high, defiant. He missed. He can't silence us! Phones zoomed in, capturing the blood, the defiance, the truth of survival. Elena's eyes burned with fire. She stepped forward, her chains clinking. Her voice sliced through the chamber. You see? Even with a gun, he cannot break us. This is their power, violence. And this is ours, resistance. The protesters ignited. Chants slammed against the walls. Resist, resist, resist! Hale's face twisted. His authority, once absolute, now hung by a thread. His weapon trembled in his grip, but his control was gone. Arrest her! He shouted, his voice raw, panicked. Arrest them all! But no one moved. Not the crowd, not even his officers. They were frozen, watching the tide shift. Then the crowd surged. Dozens pressed forward, their voices rising. They weren't just protesting now, they were protecting. They formed a barrier around Elena and Monroe, hands locked, bodies tight. Phones streamed every second. Social feeds exploded with comments, likes, shares. The world was watching, and the world was angry. Hale stumbled back, eyes darting, his weapon shaking. "Stay back! I'll shoot again!" But the words fell hollow, because the people weren't afraid anymore. A young woman near the front raised her voice, trembling but loud. "You shoot one of us, 1,000 more will rise!" The crowd roared in agreement. 1,000 more! 1,000 more! Elena's voice soared, fueled by their power. This is the truth they fear. That together we are stronger than any gun, any badge, any corrupt system. The chant thundered, shaking the very air. Stronger! Stronger! Monroe swayed but refused to fall. He braced himself against Elena's shoulder, his jaw clenched. "You're done, Hale, it's over." But Hale refused to yield. His eyes were wild, darting to the exits. He stumbled toward the side door, weapon raised, trying to claw back control. "No one leaves!" Elena's voice commanded. The protesters obeyed. Bodies surged, blocking every path. Hale's escape routes vanished, swallowed by unity. Phones followed his every move. The red dots of recording lights glowed like judgment. He spun, desperate. "Get out of my way!" But there was no way out, and the chamber had turned against him. Hale's chest heaved, his weapon jerking wildly as he searched for escape. But the crowd had sealed every exit. "No one leaves," Elena repeated, her voice commanding, almost serene in the chaos. "Not until the truth is heard." Phones tilted toward her. Faces turned. Even the officers, once Hale's soldiers, were listening now. Hale barked, desperate. "She's lying. All of you are being manipulated. This is a stunt." Elena raised her bound wrists, chains clinking, her eyes unflinching. "Then let the evidence speak." Gasps rolled through the chamber as she reached into Monroe's jacket. From the inner pocket, she pulled a slim folder, creased, blood-stained, but intact. The chamber held its breath. Elena spread the papers on the podium, her voice rising with conviction. Internal memos from Greenwood Holdings. Payment schedules, quotas, direct orders to target high-risk demographics. Phones zoomed in, capturing every damning word. Screens flashed across social media, evidence bleeding into the world in real time. Elena lifted another page. Bank records. Millions funneled into shell companies. Kickbacks paid to judges, to council members, to officers. "To him!" She pointed at Hale. The crowd roared. Shouts shook the walls. "Corruption! Corruption!" Hale's face went pale beneath the red fury. He swung the gun back toward her. "You're fabricating all of it! Do not believe her!" Monroe staggered forward, blood still staining his shirt, his voice like gravel but unbreakable. "I've seen the files. Every word is real. I swear it on my badge." The officers nearest to Hale shifted uneasily. One lowered his baton. Another took a slow step back. The cracks were spreading. Elena pressed on, her words sharp as glass. 47 false arrests. 86% coerced pleas. Families bankrupted by probation fees. This is not policing. It is extortion wrapped in a uniform. The crowd erupted in fury. "Justice! Justice!" Phones shook with trembling hands. She lifted the final sheet, her voice rising into a crescendo. "And here the signatures. The contracts linking it all together. Hale's name, his initials, his orders," the chamber thundered. Protesters surged forward, not with violence, but with unstoppable truth. Hale's weapon wavered. His eyes darted, wild, desperate. "You think this changes anything? You think one speech, one folder can bring me down?" Elena met his gaze, her voice ablade. "Not one folder. Not one speech. A movement, a city, a world that has finally seen what you are." The chants rose like a storm. "We see you. We see you." Hale's control shattered. His last mask fell away, leaving only raw, naked desperation. With a howl, he lunged forward, the gun swinging toward Elena's chest. Phones jolted. Screams tore the chamber apart. The truth was out. But the danger was far from over. Hale lunged. The chamber exploded in screams. His weapon sliced the air, barreling toward Elena. But Monroe moved first, wounded, staggering, but unyielding. He slammed into Hale with his full weight. The gun fired again, the crack deafening. The bullet tore a light fixture from the ceiling, raining sparks across the marble. Phones caught every second. The two men crashed to the floor, grappling. Hale snarled like a cornered animal, clawing for his gun. Monroe's bloodied hands clamped down, straining, muscles shaking. Elena stepped back, chains rattling. Her eyes never left the struggle. Her voice rose above the chaos. "This is what corruption looks like when it's cornered." The crowd surged forward. Protesters poured over the barricades surrounding the fight. Their chants became a battle cry. "Down with him! Down with him!" Hale broke free for a heartbeat, his gun hand rising again. But this time, it wasn't just Monroe stopping him. Two officers, once his own men, grabbed his arm, twisting it hard. Another yanked the weapon free. The metallic clatter of the gun hitting the marble echoed like freedom itself. The chamber roared. Phones zoomed in on Hale's face. Sweat, rage, disbelief. Monroe pressed a knee into his chest, gasping, his voice hoarse but fierce. "It's over." "Hale, you're finished!" Hale spat, thrashing. But more hands pinned him. Protesters, officers, strangers who had found strength together. For the first time, Hale looked small, powerless, exposed. Elena stepped forward, her wrists raised. "This man tried to silence me. He tried to silence all of you. But look around, truth cannot be chained. Justice cannot be gagged. Not anymore!" The crowd erupted. "Justice! Justice!" Phones streamed live to millions. The story was no longer rumor or protest. It was undeniable proof unfolding in real time. Hale shouted, his voice cracking. "You'll regret this! All of you! You don't know who you're fighting!" But his words fell hollow. No one listened. No one cared. Monroe, bloodied but unbroken, leaned close enough for only Hale and the nearest phones to hear. "We know exactly who we're fighting. And we've already won!" The chant swelled again, shaking the chamber. Hale's struggles weakened under the weight of countless hands. His empire of fear had collapsed. Then, the heavy oak doors of the council chamber burst open. A new voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Step aside! State investigators, clear the way!" The crowd parted in shock as a team of dark-suited officials surged in, badges gleaming. Their leader, a woman with steel in her gaze, strode forward. "Captain Torres," she said firmly, locking eyes with Elena. "We need that evidence, now!" Gasps swept the room. Phones tilted instantly, capturing the moment. The truth had toppled Hale. But the fight for justice was just beginning. The chamber. Moments ago, chaos had fallen into a tense, fragile silence. State investigators moved like a dark tide, their suits crisp, their eyes sharp. The lead investigator, a woman with iron-gray hair and a voice that carried authority, stepped into the circle. Her badge flashed under the lights. "Step aside," she ordered, and even the angriest voices yielded. Hale thrashed under the hands that pinned him, his face twisted in rage. "This is illegal! A conspiracy! She's setting me up!" His words were frantic, spittle spraying, the voice of a man who had lost everything but refused to admit it. Elena stood tall despite her shackles, her wrists bleeding but her spirit unbroken. She held the folder close, eyes locked on the investigator. "You want the truth? Here it is." She extended the blood-stained file. Pages creased from the struggle, but damning in their detail. The investigator took it, flipping swiftly through the evidence. Her eyes moved quickly, too quickly to read every line, but enough to recognize authenticity. Wire transfers, signatures, probation contracts laced with quotas. The rot laid bare. "This," she said, her voice low but steady, "is real." The crowd erupted. Cheers, tears, phones raised higher. Monroe, swaying on his feet, his shirt soaked in red, raised his voice. "Don't celebrate yet. You all know how this works. Evidence vanishes. Reports get buried. Corruption runs deep." His words cut through the euphoria like a warning bell. The crowd hushed, remembering every false dawn, every broken promise. Elena lifted her chin, her voice steady. "Then we keep the truth alive. Every phone here, every recording, make it impossible to bury. Make it too loud to silence." The crowd roared again, chanting. "Too loud! Too loud!" The investigator closed the file, her eyes sweeping over the room. For a moment, she looked not just at Elena, but at every face staring back, angry, hopeful, unyielding. Her words rang out, sharp and deliberate. "Lieutenant Hale, by order of the state, you are under arrest for corruption, extortion, and attempted homicide." Gasps tore through the chamber. Phones shook with the force of people raising them higher. Hale screamed, his voice raw. "You can't do this! I own this city!" The investigator didn't flinch. She signaled her team, who hauled Hale to his feet, shackling him with the same steel he had abused against so many others. The crowd thundered, chants rolling like thunder. "Justice! Justice!" Elena's chest rose and fell, her body trembling, but her eyes remained fierce. She looked not at Hale, but at the cameras. "This isn't the end," she declared. "One man falls, but the system that fed him still stands. Don't stop watching. Don't stop fighting. Justice doesn't end with an arrest. It begins with what comes after." Her words rippled through the chamber, igniting something deeper than celebration. This was not closure. This was a call. The investigator raised a hand, silencing the roar. Her voice carried a weight that made even the walls seem to lean in. Hale will face justice. But make no mistake, he was not alone. Others will fall, higher than him, deeper than him. "This is only the beginning," the crowd gasped. Cheers mixed with shock. Phones zoomed in, desperate to catch every word. Elena's heart clenched. Relief battled suspicion. The fight was not over. But for the first time, she felt the tide turning, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been silenced. And as Hale was dragged out screaming, the chant rose again, louder than ever. "Justice! Justice!" But beneath the roar, one question lingered. Would the system truly clean itself, or was this just another performance for the cameras? The chamber vibrated with chants as Hale was dragged away, his voice breaking into incoherent shouts. The steel cuffs he once wielded now bound his own wrists. His fury was swallowed by the roar of "Justice! Justice!" But the silence that followed was heavier than the noise. The lead investigator stood at the podium, Elena's blood-stained folder under her arm. Her expression was sharp, unwavering, cameras locked on her face. "This investigation does not end here," she declared, her voice steady but carrying the weight of thunder. Hale was not alone. "The corruption runs deeper, through city councils, courts, and corporate boardrooms." Gasps cut through the crowd. Phones zoomed closer. Fingers typed frantically as streams exploded with comments. The investigator continued, flipping through the folder. "We have evidence of coordination between Greenwood Holdings and members of this very council. Payments disguised as community initiatives, kickbacks routed through probation contracts, judicial signatures authorizing false charges." The crowd erupted again, this time with rage. "Name them! Name them!" Monroe staggered but lifted his bloodied hand, steadying himself on the podium. His voice cracked but held. "This isn't just one man. It's a machine, and the only way to stop it is to tear out every gear." Elena stood beside him, her wrists still raw, her voice fierce. "This is bigger than one city, bigger than one courtroom. This system feeds on silence. Don't give it silence. Give it sunlight." The chant shifted instantly.
"Sunlight!
Sunlight!" The investigator raised her hand, commanding quiet. "The Department of Justice has already filed sealed indictments. And today those indictments will be unsealed. Here. Now." Shockwaves tore through the room. Reporters elbowed forward. Protesters raised phones higher. The air buzzed with anticipation. "Among those indicted," the investigator continued, her tone deliberate, "are sitting judges, elected officials, and senior law enforcement." Gasps exploded. She scanned the room, her eyes sweeping across the very officials seated in the chamber. Some paled. Others stiffened, their masks cracking under the weight of exposure. Elena's chest tightened. She knew this was necessary, but also dangerous. Exposing power in real time meant backlash, retaliation, risk. But there was no turning back. Monroe leaned close, whispering through clenched teeth. "If they name names here, the system will bleed. But so will we." Elena met his gaze, her voice a quiet vow. "Then let it bleed. Truth is worth the wounds." The investigator slammed the folder shut. Her voice thundered. "The first unsealed indictment, Councilman Everett Granger. For racketeering, conspiracy, and fraud. The chamber erupted into chaos. Shouts, cries, council members surged to their feet. Some shouted denials. Others tried to slip quietly toward the exits, their faces pale as ghosts. Phones captured every angle. The chant reignited, louder, sharper, unstoppable. "Name them all! Name them all!" Elena's voice rose above the storm, her tone a clarion call. "This is the reckoning! No more shadows, no more silence. Every name, every crime, let the world see it all." The investigator's eyes locked with hers. For the first time, a faint nod. Agreement. Recognition. She raised the file high, her words slicing through the chaos. More indictments will follow, and tonight the world will know every name, every betrayal, every act of corruption that sold justice to the highest bidder. The crowd thundered. The marble trembled. The air crackled with electricity, but beneath the roar, Elena felt the weight settle heavier on her shoulders. This was no victory. This was war, and the first battle had only just been won. And as the investigator prepared to read the next name, the question tightened like a noose around the chamber. How many pillars of power would fall before the night was over? The chamber was a storm. Phones lifted like 1,000 eyes, capturing every word. The lead investigator's voice rang steady, unflinching, carrying over the roar. The next indictment, Judge Harriet Lorne, charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Gasps tore through the crowd. A woman in black robes rose from her seat, her face drained of color. "This is outrageous," she shouted, but her words drowned beneath the chants. "Corruption! Corruption!" The investigator didn't pause. Sheriff Alan Cross, racketeering, bribery, false imprisonment, chaos erupted. Protesters surged toward the officials. Officers moved, but this time not to protect the accused. They formed a barrier against them, keeping them from slipping away. Linda Ferris shrieked from the corner, her voice shrill, panicked. "They're all lying! All of them!" But no one turned to her. She was already forgotten, swept aside by the avalanche of truth. Elena raised her bound wrists, her voice carrying like a blade through the noise. "You see now? One man never works alone. It takes a system. It takes enablers. It takes silence. That's how corruption survives," the crowd answered with thunder. "No more silence! No more silence!" Monroe swayed on his feet, his shirt soaked, his breath ragged. He staggered, collapsing to one knee. Gasps shot through the crowd. Elena turned instantly, steadying him with her shoulder. "Stay with me," she urged, his jaw clenched. He shook his head, forcing himself upright. His voice rasped but carried. "I won't sit down. Not until every name is read. I want them to see me still standing." Cheers erupted, raw and emotional. Phones zoomed in on his defiance. Monroe, bleeding but unbroken, had become the living embodiment of resistance. The investigator's voice rose again. Councilwoman Vera, District Attorney Mills, Director Sanford. All indicted, each name dropped like a hammer. Each revelation tore more gasps, more shouts. Officials tried to move, to slip toward the exits, but the people blocked them. Protesters locked arms, chanting louder. "Face the truth! Face the truth!" The chamber shook with fury and vindication. Elena's voice rang above it all. "Truth means nothing if there is no accountability. Do not let them vanish into shadows again. Keep your eyes on them. Keep your cameras on them. Justice dies when attention dies." The chant surged. "Eyes on them! Eyes on them!" The investigator's eyes scanned the file, then swept across the chamber. For the first time, her voice wavered with the weight of what came next. "There is one more name." The roar hushed. Silence pressed down heavy, broken only by the sound of camera shutters clicking, phones trembling in hands. This final indictment reaches beyond this chamber, beyond this city. Gasps. Elena's heart clenched. She felt it in her bones, the tremor before the quake. The investigator's voice steadied, every syllable deliberate. The last name belongs to a senior state official, someone who believed themselves untouchable. The silence fractured into whispers. Who? Who? The investigator raised the folder high, her words sharp as a blade. "And tonight, their name will be spoken." The chamber erupted in cries, chants, disbelief. Phones surged higher. Reporters shouted questions. Protesters screamed demands. Elena's chest rose, her eyes blazing. She knew what this meant. The circle of corruption was wider, deeper, more dangerous than anyone had feared. And as the crowd shook the marble beneath their feet, the question hung like lightning in the air. Whose name would crack the system open completely? The silence before the storm was unbearable, all eyes fixed on the investigator. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the final page. "The last name on this list," she said, her voice cutting through the chamber like steel, "is State Senator Gerald Whitaker." The room erupted. Gasps turned into roars. The crowd surged forward, chants colliding into a wave of fury. "Whitaker! Whitaker! Corruption must fall!" Reporters shouted over each other, their microphones thrust forward. Phones streamed live across the world. The marble walls shook with the sound of truth finally unleashed. Whitaker himself, seated in the council's front row, went pale. His lips moved, searching for words, but none came. His hand clutched the arm of his chair like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. The investigator's voice carried over the chaos. "Senator Whitaker is charged with racketeering, conspiracy, and profiting directly from coerced probation schemes." The chants turned to thunder. "Shut it down! Shut it down!" Whitaker staggered to his feet. "Lies!" he bellowed. His voice cracked, echoing weakly against the storm of rage. "Fabricated! All fabricated!" But no one believed him. His words dissolved in the roar. Officers moved quickly, encircling him. Unlike the past, there was no shield of privilege now, no protection from the truth. His face twisted, desperation raw. "I am the state! You can't touch me!" But hands took him anyway. Steel cuffs snapped shut. The crowd roared louder, their fury a tidal wave of justice. Elena felt Monroe falter beside her. His breath rattled, his knees buckled. She gripped his arm, her voice fierce. "Stay with me, Commander. They need to see you stand." His eyes burned with pain, but also with fire. Slowly, agonizingly, he straightened, pulling himself tall. Blood darkened his shirt. Sweat poured from his face, but he stood. And when he spoke, the chamber hushed. "You think this ends with one senator?" His voice rasped, but every word struck like a hammer. "No, this was built over decades. Brick by brick, lie by lie. It goes higher. It goes deeper. But hear me!" He turned to the crowd, his gaze fierce, his body trembling but unyielding. "This is the day we stopped bowing. This is the day we said enough." The roar shook the building. "Enough! Enough! Enough!" Elena felt the surge of the moment. She stepped forward, her voice sharp, cutting through the chants. "Justice begins tonight, but justice must be carried tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. Do not let them rebuild the chains once we've broken them." The crowd answered with fury. "No chains! No chains!" State investigators flooded the chamber. Dark suits, stern faces, moving with ruthless precision. One by one, they escorted the accused, judges, council members, the sheriff, the senator, down the aisles, through the doors, into waiting vans. Phones tracked every step. Protesters outside roared as each figure emerged. The chants grew into a single unified cry that rolled through the city like thunder. "Justice now! Justice now!" Inside, Elena's voice shook with exhaustion, but carried with conviction. "Remember this moment. Etch it into your memory. For once, the system shook, not because it wanted to, but because the people made it." Monroe sagged against her, his strength nearly gone, but his eyes still blazed. "Promise me," he whispered, his words for her alone. "Promise me you'll keep going. Even when they come for you next." Her jaw tightened. "I promise." The investigator gathered the last of her files, her voice trembling but resolute. Tonight the walls cracked. "But tomorrow we tear them down!" The chamber thundered with approval. Protesters inside and out screamed until their throats bled, their fury carrying into the night. Whitaker's pale face disappeared through the doors, swallowed by the tide of justice. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, her heart pounding. She knew this wasn't the end. She could feel it in the marrow of her bones. The rot stretched higher, beyond Whitaker, beyond the state. But tonight, for the first time, the truth had triumphed in daylight, and that truth would not go back into the shadows. The story was no longer theirs alone. It belonged to everyone. As the chants thundered on and Monroe leaned heavy against her shoulder, Elena whispered to herself, too quiet for the cameras, but loud enough for her own soul. This is only the beginning. The heavy doors of City Hall burst open. Floodlights blazed against the night sky. Thousands of protesters pressed forward, their chants shaking the ground. When the first indicted official was marched out in cuffs, the crowd roared. When Senator Whitaker stumbled down the marble steps, pale and sweating, the sound became a thunderclap heard across the city. "Justice now! Justice now!" Phones lit the night like stars, filming every second, streaming it to the world. The footage spread faster than fire, hashtags igniting across social media in dozens of languages. Elena stepped onto the steps, Monroe leaning heavily against her. He looked like a soldier who had fought too many wars, blood-stained, staggering, but still upright. The crowd saw him. Their chant shifted, fierce and reverent, "Monroe! Monroe! Monroe!" His eyes glistened. For the first time that night, his hardened face softened. He tried to raise his hand, but his strength gave out. His knees buckled. "No!" Elena caught him as he crumpled. Panic rippled through the front rows. Medics rushed forward, pushing past protesters. Monroe's lips moved, barely a whisper. "Don't let it die here." She squeezed his hand. "It won't, I promise. Rest now." He was carried away on a stretcher, the crowd parting respectfully, many reaching out to touch his arm as he passed. The chant followed him like a blessing. "Hero! Hero! Hero!" When the medics disappeared into the night, the people turned back to Elena. Thousands of eyes locked on her. For the first time, the weight of their expectation pressed on her chest. She took a breath. Her voice rang through the night. "Tonight you made the walls tremble. Tonight you showed them that the people are not afraid anymore." Cheers erupted, deafening. "But listen to me," she continued, her voice sharper, steadier. "This fight doesn't end with a few arrests. Corruption is not one man, not one senator, not even one system. It is roots tangled deep in the soil of power. And they will try to strike back." The crowd hushed, listening. "They will smear us. They will threaten us. They will say it's over. But we know better, don't we?" The answer thundered back. "Yes, yes!" She lifted her bound wrists high, the cuffs still clamped on them, gleaming in the floodlights. "Look at these chains. Tonight they meant to silence me. But instead you turned them into a symbol. They are not chains anymore, they are proof." The crowd erupted. "Proof! Proof! Proof!" Elena's voice grew fierce, riding the wave of their energy. "Proof that when they try to break one of us, all of us rise. Proof that their lies can no longer hide in the dark. Proof that justice belongs to the people." The roar shook the night. Fireworks cracked in the distance, protesters setting them off in celebration. Behind Elena, City Hall glowed with floodlights. Ahead of her, a sea of people stretched farther than her eyes could see, their phones raised like torches. She felt tears sting her eyes, but she held them back. She would not weep here, not yet. Instead, she spoke with steel. "Remember this night. Tell your children. Tell the world. They wanted us silent, but we shouted. They wanted us broken, but we stood. They wanted us blind, but we opened our eyes. And now, they can never close them again." The chant rose once more, rolling like thunder through the streets. "Never again! Never again!" Elena's chest swelled. She wasn't speaking as captain anymore. Not as an investigator. Not as an official. She was speaking as one of them. "Hold the line!" she shouted. "Tomorrow they will lie. Tomorrow they will threaten. But we—" She thrust her bound wrists high again. "We are the proof they can't bury." The crowd roared. "Proof! Proof! Proof!" Above the chaos, reporters shouted live to their cameras. "This moment marks the largest corruption scandal in state history. Protests now spreading to neighboring cities. Global attention rising as the footage circulates." Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Maya, still bandaged but alive. "You lit the fire. Now watch it spread." She looked back at the glowing hall where Whitaker and the others had been dragged out. For one night, justice had broken through, but in her bones, she felt the tremor of what came next. This was only the first domino. There were more, higher, stronger, darker. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for herself, but the camera lights still caught her determined face. "They don't know it yet," she murmured. But this was just the beginning. The noise of the crowd fades. The lights of City Hall dim, and for a moment, silence. What began as one false accusation inside a jewelry shop became something much greater. It became a mirror showing us how fragile justice can be, and how powerful truth becomes when people stand together. Elena's fight is not just her own. It is the fight of every person who has ever been silenced. Every voice that was told it didn't matter. Tonight proves that no voice is too small, no truth is too weak, and no chain is unbreakable when we rise together. If this story moved you, if it made you feel the weight of injustice and the fire of hope, then I ask you to join us here. Subscribe to this channel not just for stories but for reminders that truth still matters, that courage still matters, that voices, your voice, still matter. Leave a like if you believe in accountability. Share this story with someone who needs to know they are not alone. And comment below, what does justice mean to you? We will be here tomorrow and the next day, bringing more voices, more stories, more truth that refuses to be buried. From my heart to yours, thank you for standing with us. Thank you for giving time and attention and belief. Until the next story, stay strong, stay brave, and remember, justice is never a gift. Justice is something we fight for, together. I'll see you in the next one.